Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. Right, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about CABANA, which is a very exciting new capacity building project for bioinformatics in Latin America. So just to give you a little bit of background information, this is a challenge-led capacity strengthening project, and it's focused exclusively on bioinformatics and the applications of bioinformatics. It's orchestrated by an international consortium. At present, we have 10 organizations involved. 9 of them are in Latin America, and one, the European Bioinformatics Institute, where I'm based, is in the UK. We are open to new partners from within and beyond our current partner countries, and we're also open to new collaborators within the UK as well. So if you're based in a Latin American country, or if you're based in the UK and you'd like to participate more formally in CABANA, please do let us know, and we'll explain a little bit more about what's involved there. We're funded by the Global Challenges Research Fund. This is part of the UK aid budget, and it's aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And I'll be talking a little bit more later on about how we align ourselves with those development goals. It's quite a long project, a little over 4 years. We started on the 1st of October this year, so we've really only just got started, and we'll end in December 2021. So what's CABANA all about? It's really about addressing the slow implementation of data-driven biology in Latin America. And I'll talk a little bit more about why there is an underrepresentation of biological data in the public data resources later on. We have 3 challenge areas and 4 mechanisms for ensuring the success of CABANA. So our challenge areas are aligned with these UN Sustainable Development Goals, and they're all challenge areas that are of global importance but of particular relevance to Latin America. They're communicable disease, sustainable food production, and protection of biodiversity. We have a number of underpinning principles for the project as well. One of these is open science, ensuring that everything that we produce during CABANA is openly available as far as it possibly can be, and there to be shared by the research community at large. We are focusing on inclusivity, ensuring that we have gender balance, ensuring that we do our very best to include minority groups in our target countries. And I think this is really important. We want to train people at all career stages. Many research-oriented projects that focus on training focus at the early stages, PhD students and postdocs. And I think for bioinformatics, it's really important that we also bring more senior researchers on board, because bioinformatics is a relatively new field. And many of us have had no formal training in bioinformatics. We don't feel very confident supervising people who are doing bioinformatics projects, and so I really want to make sure in CABANA that we open up what we're doing to people at all stages. And of course that's part of our inclusivity activities as well. So how are we actually going to do this? Well, we're going to be offering research secondments focused on our challenge areas. We're going to be running a number of workshops. The vast majority of these are going to be in Latin American countries, and there are just a small number that are associated with our Train the Trainer activities that will take place here in the UK. We're also going to be developing new e-learning resources. Again, 3 courses, because those courses will be focused on each of our challenge areas. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about each of those activities and how we're actually going to execute those as we go through the webinar. But just to introduce who will actually make it happen, I mentioned that we have 10 partners. And this map doesn't show them very clearly, actually, because we've got a couple of examples where we've got 2 institutes in the same city. So you can't see 10 pins on this map, but there are 10 institutes involved, and we're fairly well geographically spread throughout Latin America. But as I mentioned earlier, we're open to new collaborators, and we are especially interested in engaging with countries that we have not brought into the consortium so far. So at this point, I'd just like to know a little bit about where you're from, actually. Now, the easiest way to do this is for you to use the chat box and for you to simply say which country you're based in. So if you could do that, and then we'll revisit your answers later on, and that will help us to get a really good feel for who we've got online today. And then this is my opportunity to introduce the people who are involved in CABANA to date. We had our kickoff meeting in Campinas just last week, and so this is a photograph from the last day of our meeting. It was hosted by Benelton Carvalho, who is here. We have representatives from all 10 of our partners. I can also use this as my first opportunity to introduce Ian Willis, who is here and is also sitting in the room with me. Hello. Together with our Scientific Training Officer for eLearning, who is enabling this webinar to happen, Melissa Burke. So I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce Ian. He literally just joined us this week and is going to be project managing CABANA. So all of those who are intimately involved in the project will get to know Ian. So one of the major topics that we discussed at our kickoff meeting last week is how do we go about addressing the underrepresentation of data and the linkage to the owners of that data in the Latin American region. So Latin American biodata is heavily underrepresented in the public databases, and I've pinched an example from one of Benelton's slides here at the kickoff meeting. This is from the 1,000 Genomes projects, and this shows that you know, the vast majority of Latin America is not actually represented in the 1,000 Genomes data at all. And so although this particular project is a few years old now, this is an ongoing issue. It's not just human data of Latin American origin. We have similar issues with agri-food data and with biodiversity data. Another problem that we have is that data of Latin American origin is frequently generated and analysed outside of Latin America. So the samples are sent away to a sequencing lab outside of the region, and then there's a disconnect between the scientists who actually collected the samples and perhaps did the preliminary workup and are interested in the biology behind that particular data set, and the people who then did the sequencing and the ongoing analysis of the data. So these are issues that we'd really like to at least work towards addressing in CABANA. And so there are a number of things that we're aiming to do throughout the project. One of those is stimulating submission of Latin American data into the public databases as far as is ethical. And obviously some of the data types that we work with, particularly identifiable human data, we can't put completely in the public domain, although we can put metadata in the public domain. But we have well-defined mechanisms for doing this, and there are good international standards for doing this. So our goal here is to, of course, do this within the international standards that already exist. So another thing that we're planning to do is to work with funders and policymakers to encourage the inclusion of Latin American data in the public domain. Funders and policymakers are in a uniquely strong position to help with this, because they can encourage people who their research, who their funds enable to put their data in the public domain. And then another very straightforward thing that we can do, and that I'm going to ask for all of your help on, is to showcase Latin American data resources and tools. And my hope is that ultimately this will help some of those resources to become increasingly well connected with the global public access data resources and tools. But also we want to make it very, very clear that these resources are made in Latin America. So I think we can help Latin American scientists to raise global awareness of the fantastic research that's going on in the region. Okay, so at this point, I'd like to launch our first official poll using the polling software in our webinar system, and I'd just like to learn a little bit more about whether you have submitted data to public bioinformatics databases. So the poll is just coming up. If you could select one of the following responses, and if your reason for not submitting data to public resources is not represented in these answers, please do use the chat box to tell us why you haven't submitted data to public data resources. When we discussed this in our kickoff meeting last week, I think there was a feeling that there's a need for awareness raising, there's a need for education in how to submit the data, because it's often quite tricky. There's a need for organisations like the EBI and the other major international data providers to work hard to make the submission process as straightforward as possible, and also to to do exactly what we're doing now, which is to go and do outreach and encourage people to make the most of these data resources. And there are lots and lots of reasons for not submitting data into the public domain, and it would really help us if we had a good feel for this. Okay, so actually of the people who are at this webinar, rather a high percentage of you have used public databases to submit your data. So that's fantastic, because you can help us to spread the word to the research community in Latin America about what the benefits of doing this are. Okay, I'm having problems advancing my slides again. Here we go. So this is I've been asking rather a lot of you in this webinar so far, but this is the last thing I'm going to ask you to do before the question and answer session at the end. It would be very helpful if you could use the chat box to tell us about any Latin American databases or tools that you're using that enable you to do your research. And we discussed at the kickoff meeting that what we'd really like to do is create a page on our newly launched website so that we can raise awareness of these resources and hopefully bring them to the attention of a wider audience. Okay, so to get back to the guts of the CABANA project, I just wanted to say a little bit about how we're going to be governed, and then we'll go into what we're actually going to be doing over the next 4 years. So we have an executive group which is essentially responsible for the strategic direction of the project. That group will be chaired by me. We have our co-coordinator, Marco Cristanco, who's based at the University of the Andes in Colombia. We have 5 national leads. We have our project manager, Ian, and we will have a project officer from Research Councils UK, and the Research Council that's been nominated to be responsible for our project, if you like, is going to be based at the BBSRC, which is the Biosciences and Biotechnology Research Council here in the UK. In addition to that executive group, we will also have the benefit of an independent advisory group, and we're going to ensure that that group includes an ethics expert, because some of the biological data that we anticipate our target audience is working with will be of a sensitive nature, and we need to make sure that we can handle that appropriately. We are going to include an inclusivity expert to make sure that all of the work that we're doing is culturally appropriate and that we're as inclusive as possible to minority groups. And then we're going to have an expert on each of our scientific challenge topics. Finally, we want to make sure that we have a training and career development expert and representation from the other projects that have been funded by the Global Challenges Research Fund. And there's one project in particular, a project called Bridge Columbia, which is being run by our collaborators at the Earlham Institute just down the road in Norwich, which is particularly closely aligned with CABANA, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to work very closely with them, especially on our biodiversity challenge. Okay, and then I've already mentioned the different activities that we're going to be running, and we have a lead now for most of those activities. Actually, e-learning is going to be coming online later on in the project, and we don't yet have a lead for e-learning, but we have nominated leads for each of the other strands of the project. So just to tell you a little bit more about each of those strands. First of all, research secondments. We've had a huge amount of interest in our research secondments, and basically these are going to enable scientists from Latin America to join a group either here at the EBI or potentially at other collaborating institutes either in the UK or in Latin America, in our partner countries, to develop their bioinformatics skills. This is going to be open to scientists at all career stages. And all of our partners have identified ideas for projects, and we've got quite a range of different types of project here. Some of them are based on curiosity-driven research. Some are based around the development of new bioinformatics services and tools, so they're more software development oriented or data curation oriented. And then we also have a number of projects that are around developing training activities as well, and building training capacity in Latin America. The outcomes of our secondments, as far as is possible, will be placed in the public domain. And so here are some of the mechanisms by which we'll do that. First of all research papers coming out of the project will be published in open access journals to give them the widest possible audience. Any software that we develop as part of the project will be licensed under open source licenses, and any data sets that we develop will be made openly available unless, of course, there are ethical reasons for controlling access, such as identifiable human data or data from an area that is considered to belong to an indigenous community and therefore has to stay with them. But as far as we can, we will try and make these data openly available for the research community to make use of. Of course, you know, we're particularly keen to ensure that these data are available through the EBI's public databases, but we're not excluding access through other data resources. And if there are particular public databases of Latin American origin that are not exchanging data with us yet, then we are completely open to those data resources being used. And who knows, perhaps that could begin conversations around bringing some Latin American partners into these major international data exchange agreements. And then finally, any training materials that we develop as part of CABANA will be given a Creative Commons license and made freely available. They'll certainly be made available through our e-learning resource. Because they're Creative Commons, there are then no limits on them being made available through other e-learning resources and other channels as well. The only restriction that we have on that is that if you use any materials that have this license, you then also have to make them available under similar conditions so that others can reuse and tweak them as well. and that's basically ensuring that we retain this philosophy of open sharing of training information, which is very much in line with our open philosophy of data sharing, something that really is a signature of the bioinformatics research community as a whole. Okay, in terms of our train the trainer activities, the plan here is that small groups of scientists from the network will come to the EBI for a couple of weeks to receive some tailor-made training. This will be based around how to develop and deliver successful bioinformatics training. Part of how we do this is through supporting our trainees to develop their own training activities, which they then get an opportunity to use whilst they are here in the UK. So our planning here is that we're going to deliver 3 courses, one on each of our challenge areas, and that our apprentice trainers will actually be delivering training activities as part of those courses. Another part of this plan is that we'll involve bioinformatics experts from other UK-based organisations. So this will help us to grow the network. It will help our Latin American collaborators to gain a strong root in their UK-based collaborations. Our hope is that these activities will lay the foundation for our partner institutes to develop a network of bioinformatics training centres throughout the region. Now, I'm aware that there are already many fantastic training initiatives going on in Latin America. I know there's a training course that some of the CABANA partners are involved in Panama next week. I know that British Columbia has some things planned for February. I'm aware that Software Carpentry Movement is doing a lot of training in Latin America and has helped to develop quite a large cohort of bioinformatics, software carpentry trainers in Latin America. And so I would also like to ensure that we capture some of this information and make it available through the CABANA website, so that we can start to build a kind of one-stop shop for training opportunities that are related to bioinformatics in Latin America. So again, if you're aware of any training that's taking place in your institute that's openly available to scientists throughout the region, or if you're going to something that you think could be of interest to this network, do either let us know using the chat function, or join our mailing list and drop us a line onto the mailing list. Our plan is that we'll put together a list of these training opportunities. I don't want to just provide a list of things that are generated by CABANA here. I would like to make this as open as possible to the community to showcase their own activities. Obviously, if you're just doing something that is internal to your own organisation, then it's of limited utility to showcase that on a public website. But if you're open to trainees coming from elsewhere, then it would be great for us to help you to promote them. Okay, on to the workshops that we're planning to run in Latin America. We actually have a target to deliver 28 of these throughout the project. Initially, they're going to take place in our partner institutions, but we plan to engage with new hosts so that we can get a good geographical spread and a good spread in terms of scientific research areas, and of course incorporate other countries on the DAC list in Latin America. These workshops will be a joint effort between EBI scientists and scientists local to the region, and I'm anticipating that at first we'll be sending quite a number of EBI staff members over, but as our train the trainer activities kick in, and as CABANA's training network grows, EBI's direct involvement will gradually reduce, because the region's need for EBI trainers will gradually reduce as the project meets its goals. In addition to bioinformatics focused workshops, we've also had quite a lot of interest in workshops on research management and on management of research infrastructure. A number of our partners are setting up national bioinformatics centres or are setting up core facilities in bioinformatics that are going to be open to scientists from around their country or around their region. And there's a real appetite for some training in how to manage your research group or how to manage your budding research infrastructure or core facility. So the plan is that a number of these workshops will actually focus on research management rather than on the technical aspects of bioinformatics. And of course, as we start to plan these workshops, we'll make the information available through our new website, and we'll tweet about them, and we'll send messages to our mailing list. We'll make every effort to ensure that those who are interested in CABANA get to hear about them as soon as we open our doors. E-learning resources. I mentioned at the beginning of my talk that we're planning to create courses on the topics around our 3 challenge areas. This will help us to ensure that CABANA is scalable, and it will also help us to develop reusable training materials. I'm hoping that some of these reusable training materials will then get incorporated into undergraduate and postgraduate courses, so that we can have an influence on the next generation of bioinformaticians in addition to the current generation. One of our partner organisations, the University of the Andes, has been piloting the use of webinars and e-learning tutorials as part of a new master's course in Colombia. So this is being led by Alejandro Reyes, and certainly within the organisation it's been tremendously successful, and we've had very good feedback from the students. There's a lot of interest in expanding this to include other universities, and in fact we're piloting that this very week. So we'll keep you posted as to how that's going, and if you'd be interested in participating in that initiative, again, do drop us a line, either using the chat function or using the mailing list. Okay, so I've mentioned our new website a number of times. It launched this morning. It's really your go-to place for all things CABANA. So the URL is www.cabana.online. We have set up a mailing list that anybody with an interest in CABANA can sign up to. We're going to be posting, as soon as we launch our research secondments, as soon as we launch our any new workshops, we'll be posting to let you know about those. And then we also have an embryonic Twitter feed. So we literally launched this yesterday as well. But we'll be tweeting a lot more over the coming years. So please do follow us, and please do let us know if you have bioinformatics initiatives in the region, and we'll follow you too. Okay, so do take a look at the CABANA website after this webinar, and you'll find more in-depth information about some of the things I've talked about. Lots of other ways in which you can get involved. I mean, I've given you several options for communication channels now. The kinds of things we'd be really interested in finding out about are, whether you'd be interested or your colleagues would be interested in applying for research secondments. We have a list of ideas on the CABANA website. We're of course open to other ideas. We have a limited number. So I'm not anticipating that we're going to be able to offer secondments to everybody who wants to do them. We're putting a selection process in place, but of course, as soon as that selection process is open, then we'll begin awareness raising about that. Do let us know if you're already delivering bioinformatics training, so that we can help to promote what you're doing. Let us know if you would like to participate in our Train the Trainer activities. Basically what we're looking for here is people who want to build bioinformatics training capacity within their own institutes. So if we can help you to do that, that would be great. Again, if you're interested in hosting a workshop to help build that capacity, then drop us a line. And then if you're part of an existing bioinformatics initiative in your region, so for example, if you belong to a national bioinformatics facility, or if you're involved in organising a national conference, or you belong to a national or a regional society, to make sure that we do a comprehensive job of listing all of the opportunities for bioinformaticians to share expertise, then it would be great for us to know about them so that we can publicise them on the CABANA website. In terms of our next steps on the project, we'll be opening our first call for research secondments before the end of the year. We're capturing information on current capacity in bioinformatics in our partner institutions. So this is basically to enable us to monitor the impact of the project as we progress. We need to know the state of the nation now so that we can see where we are in 4 years' time. I've mentioned multiple times in this talk that we're planning to collate and publish information on existing bioinformatics and bioinformatics training activities, and thank you in advance for your help in doing that. And then we're just starting to organise our first workshops and train the trainer activities. And of course, as we do all of this, we'll be continuing to spread the word about CABANA through the new website and through our communication channels. At this point, in addition to saying thank you to the fantastic consortium that I've enjoyed working with them so much through the application process. We had a great time at the meeting last week. But in addition to thanking them, I'd also like to thank the members of my team who have been involved so far. So I would particularly like to point out Prakash, who built the website for us, Ian, who participated very actively in the kickoff meeting last week, Darren, who helped everybody to get there. He booked flights for the entire consortium. There were more than 50 flights that needed booking. And then Piv, who is listening in and is going to be responsible for the delivery of our off-site workshops. There are many other people in the team involved too. I should point out Melissa, who's sitting next to me and who makes these webinars happen. But pretty much every member of the team has had some hand in helping us to get CABANA started. Okay, so with that, I'd like to thank you for listening. I've put the links to the website, the Twitter feed, our email contact, and our new mailing list on here. So I'll leave this slide up, but we are now open for questions. So please do, if you've got any questions about anything that I've mentioned, now is your opportunity to fire away. We have a question around can you have access to a summary of the project to present it to your institutions? We've actually made these slides available on the Go to Training website. If you would like me to send you a trimmed down version, I'm very, very happy to do that. I have a question from, oh, they're pouring in now. Will all of the training activities be posted through the CABANA site? Certainly, I mean, everything that we're organising through CABANA will be posted through the CABANA site. And as I mentioned, we're very keen to help others who are organising bioinformatics training in the region to promote what they're doing as well. So anything that is openly available to scientists in Latin America and is going to enable them to do bioinformatics research I think is a good candidate for us to post to the CABANA site. I have some questions about whether we have plans to provide Train the Trainer in Brazil and whether there'll be training courses in Brazil. The answer to both of those questions is yes. We have 2 partners in Brazil. One is based in the Amazon at the Vale Institute, and the other is based in Campinas, where we had our kickoff meeting last week. And there are possibilities for us to host workshops at both of those sites, and to accept Train the Trainer participants from anywhere in Brazil. If there is a large enough community of bioinformaticians in Brazil who would be interested in doing this, we might even be able to consider doing something locally, back to back with one of the workshops that we run there. I mean, definitely this is one thing that's on our to-do list. We have a question about whether there's any restriction on the topics of the training material that we can share with CABANA. If anything is licensed under a Creative Commons license, you are able to share it. There are a number of different Creative Commons licenses. The simplest one, which is CC0, has no restrictions whatsoever. CC BY allows you to redistribute anywhere, but you need to ensure that if it's reused, you acknowledge the originator. And then CC BY SA, which is the license that we use, basically places a condition on anybody who uses the training material to also make it openly available. But for any of those licenses, there's no restriction on actually sharing the materials. But in terms of the topics of the training materials, obviously they need to be related to bioinformatics. In an ideal world, they would also be related to one of our challenge areas. I mean, we're extremely keen to address scientific challenges in our 3 application areas. So, I mean, it's always a bit of a challenge in bioinformatics because there are some bioinformatics projects and there are therefore some bioinformatics training activities that address rather general things, such as how to create an ontology, or how to create a relational database, or programming in R, or statistical data analysis. And these things are generically very useful and can be applied to things beyond our 3 challenge areas. And so, I mean, I would anything of that nature, so long as it's useful to our community, then I would consider making it available and raising awareness of it. Because what we're trying to do here is build a robust and sustainable community that is sharing expertise and not reinventing the wheel when it comes to training. Okay, so we have a question about how to participate in the Train the Trainer activities and in the research secondments. And in both cases, the best thing to do here is to subscribe to the mailing list using the link on my final slide here. And then as soon as our application processes are open for both of those things, we will alert you via that list. So that's probably the most straightforward thing. At the moment, as I say, the project is only 1 month in, so we've got a little bit of work to do to work up these processes. But signing up to the All at CABANA list will ensure that you get the news as soon as it's available. And we'll also be posting to the Twitter feed, of course, but it's easy to miss things like this in Twitter. So it's looking to me as though we have addressed everybody's questions. So I'd like to thank you all for your time. I hope this has been useful. If you have any further comments or questions, please do feel free to use the mailing list to get in touch with us. I'd like to encourage you all to take a look at the website, to follow the Twitter feed, and to keep in touch. And we will start to build our lists of courses and any other resources that you've provided for us. And we'll let you know when we're going to run our next webinar. As the project progresses, we will be delivering webinars to tell you a little bit more about each of our specific activities and each of our specific challenge areas. We don't have anything else scheduled in the diary as I speak, but as soon as we do schedule something else in, we'll make it available on the web, and we'll post to the mailing list. And I think with that, I can close. So thanks again for your attention, everyone.